You've been in this space for a while. How has technology reshaped the way that we understand dopamine and addiction?
Yeah, so one of the main messages in my book, Dopamine Nation, is that technology has allowed us to drugify almost everything we consume and many things that we do, many behaviors. And by drugify, I mean we've made things more accessible than ever before. We can now, 24/7 with a touch of our smartphones, order almost everything, anything we want, and have it delivered like a pizza to our doorstep, or for that matter, have instantaneous access to digital drugs, right, which are only multiplying as we speak. So, and access, simple access, is one of the biggest risk factors for addiction. The easier it is to get some kind of frictionless, feel good substance or behavior, the more likely we are to use it, and hence the more likely we are to get addicted to it. Access has also led to drugification of our everyday experience through increased quantity. So, quantity and frequency, although we don't use quantity and frequency to diagnose addiction, they matter. And the more we use of a substance or behavior and the more often we use, the more likely we are to get addicted. And this is really the first time in human history when, like, we have almost infinite access to a whole host of highly potent substances and behaviors. Digital media, TikTok literally never runs out. I mean, can you imagine if you had an infinite amount of cocaine, right? That would
Yeah.
that would be serious. And we already have quite a lot of access if you can afford it, to cocaine. But digital media is free and it's infinite. And, even traditional drugs, things like cigarettes, right? So when the cigarette rolling machine was invented in the 1880s, we went from being able to produce, let's say, 4 cigarettes a minute to 10,000 cigarettes a minute. Maybe not immediately, but it's essentially the progression with the technology. So, the more you have of something, the more likely you are to get addicted. The third way that technology has allowed for the drugification of everyday life is through potency. So when you look at drugs that have been around for millennia, like alcohol and opioids, I mean, those are still here, but the big difference from 100, 200, 300 years ago and before is that we have now these incredibly potent forms, like fentanyl, which is 50 to 100 times more potent than opium. And it's also, we can make it in a laboratory without any plant precursor. So no need to like get a field and plant some poppies and wait for them to grow and harvest them. Now you can just make fentanyl in a laboratory pretty cheaply. You don't even really need to be much of a chemist, and you can buy the ingredients online and you can do that. So um, it just means that we've turned these things that like used to be sort of, soft drugs in some cases into really hard drugs. And, like things like cannabis is the classic example, right? So, 30, 40 years ago, the average cannabis product that you could get was about 10 to 20% THC content, THC being the active ingredient that gets people high and is addictive. And now you can find formulations of cannabis that's like 90 plus percent THC.
Wow.
So it's really a totally different landscape. We've turned cannabis into a hard drug, and many, many more examples like that. And what that means also is that as people become addicted, because they develop tolerance, they typically need more potent forms over
Yep.
time with the same effect. And now those more potent forms are accessible. Same thing with digital media. People get addicted to pornography. I mean, in the olden days, you had to go to the smoke shop and you had to be of age to get the Playboy magazine, and you had to look at your centerfold and then wait a whole month to get another one. And now, any child can go online and find very potent, deviant and even illegal forms of pornography very easily, and without even really meaning to necessarily, can find themselves consuming these highly potent forms. So it's a very different landscape. So you've got access, quantity, potency. Novelty is a big thing too. Like our brain is always looking for the next new thing. And our capitalist economy has a remarkable ability to continually, make a variation on the theme and make something new and different and exciting. And then finally, technology has the ability also for kind of a simulated uncertainty. So we know that intermittent rewards or intermittent reinforcement, some degree of reward uncertainty, is actually more reinforcing or more addictive than predictable uncertainty. So think about gambling or slot machines. It turns out that it's the fact that get a reward only intermittently and not predictably that makes slot machines so reinforcing. And of course, we've now gamblified so many things. On the digital platforms, video games have gamblified loot boxes. Social media has different ways of gamblifying that experience by giving occasional rewards, or even just the uncertainty of social media. So that also is very potentially addictive and engaging. So technology has really drugified our lives.